Biosergen is a company, a biopharmaceutical company that is working within the antifungal space. And that means that we are covering what the WHO is calling an emergent crisis, a crisis where you have increased numbers of invasive fungal infections worldwide, and where there are not enough new treatments on the way. Biosergen is having a molecule called BSG005 that is belonging to the polyene macrolide group of drugs, which are fungicidal, and we are developing this to treat invasive fungal infections. And that's what we're doing. And we put all our efforts into that. Yeah, we just in March this year, we completed our phase 1 study in healthy volunteers. And in healthy volunteers, you investigate the safety and the pharmacokinetics of the product. And for us, it was very important to see what did our product do in this single ascending dose start part of the study and a multiple ascending dose part where we dosed subjects for 7 days, with particular interest on the kidney and the liver and the lab data. And what we know from this study is that the product is safe. There were no serious adverse events at all. Those events that we saw were only mild to moderate in severity, and they were, as expected, infusion-related reactions such as headache and fibrillia and so on. So we're very happy with the outcome of the study. So we're basically ready to go into phase 2 and to test in patients. The pharmacokinetics went well, and we know how it now reacts when it gets into humans, which that's an important part of the whole development. So we're very happy with the study. The invasive fungal infections are generally diseases with a very high mortality. And as I mentioned already, BSG005 is fungicidal. That means it kills the fungus when we treat patients with such a disease. And compared to all the others, basically, of the other groups, I have to say we have 3 groups of products within this field. One is the azoles, another one is the echinocandins, and the last one is the polyene macrolide group, and we belong to that one. Basically, for invasive fungal infections, there are only 2 of these fungicidal products from the polyene group of drugs, and that's amphotericin B, or its lipid formulation, ambisome, and it is now in development, BSG005. And this is very important. The echinocandins and the azoles are generally what we call fungistatic. That means they only inhibit the growth of the fungus. They don't kill it. So it's just something that takes longer time, longer treatment, and a patient that may be able to reconstitute enough to end up with a killed fungus. It takes time. Whereas both the products within our group, ambisome / amphotericin B and BSG, is fungicidal. It means it kills the fungus, and therefore the treatment times are usually quite much shorter. And that's a big advantage as we see it. Those 2 things are very important. Well, this is a very exciting step for us. We're going into patients who has an established and diagnosed invasive fungal infections, and where the patients are in need for treatment with a polyene macrolide drug. And that would generally say it is either amphotericin B or ambisome or any other of the lipid formulations. It is so that patients who are being treated with amphotericin B products has a risk of not tolerating it due to kidney toxicity and some of the other toxicities that we know from the product, and therefore has to be taken off treatment. in some of the investigations that has been done, or tests or trials that has been done, we know it's about somewhere between 20 and 40%, on average 30% of patients that cannot tolerate it. And this trial will be testing BSG-005 in those patients who have been on treatment with amphotericin B or ambisome, but has failed or had toxicity. There are certain strains today that are also resistant to amphotericin B. This is a relatively new development as well. So we take those patients who have been taken off treatment and we put them on BSG-005 and treat them in an escalating dose fashion for 14 days. And then we see where we are. We look at mortality at 32 days. We look at all the clinical signs of an infection. We look at X-rays, MR scans, whatever you have, and of course, mycotic investigations. So this is the patient group that we're looking at. So it's basically a rescue treatment that we are putting in place here. In the first run, for those who cannot tolerate ambisome or amphotericin B, but if this comes out positive, it opens a lot of doors for BSG-005. So it's a very exciting study. Well, India is probably the country with the most incidence, highest incidence of invasive fungal infections. They have a lot of mucormycosis, which is another difficult to treat one. And they have aspergillosis, they have candidemia, and so candidiasis. So they have a lot of these patients. And we have chosen to go to India into several centers. The main reason for that is that recruitment will be much faster here than it will in many of the Western countries we normally would go into. So that's the main reason. And we go, of course, to the high quality investigational centers and hospitals in order to keep it at the same standard as we would have seen elsewhere in the world. So that's why we go to India. We are basically hoping that we can have the first recruitment, maybe even treatment going on in late October. And that means that we would, with the recruitment rate that we have seen in our feasibility studies in India, in these centers, we expect that we can complete the study in February or March next year, having top-line data end of March or beginning of April. So that will show us where we are, what we have achieved. This is our first study in patients with an invasive fungal infection. So of course, we're looking at finding an effective dose or an effective dose range, but it's also a question of exploring the safety at higher dose levels. In our phase 1 study, we couldn't go as high as we would like to because in healthy volunteers, we couldn't, we measured the plasma levels and suddenly we hit the level from our toxicology studies and then we couldn't go any further. But here we can go up as long as safety is okay. The plasma concentration doesn't matter here as much. So we will continue escalating the dose until we have, and if we have the safety that we know about this product, then we hope to have a dose or dose range that is effective so we can use it in our upcoming development program. Then we will, of course, look at adverse events, safety, see what we get when we do this. And at the end of the day, we should use all these data to prepare for the remaining development program. The main market of our interest is in the Nordic area, and of course, we are noticed on the first North stock exchange in Stockholm. And I can say the market has been terrible. There has been no movement whatsoever, and raising capital in that market has been and is still not something you would consider at all. It's a very difficult market as it is right now. Some people who are analyzing the market are saying that it is beginning to change, but I really want to see it before I believe it. It's a very, very difficult market to raise capital. So that is not in our immediate thinking that Biosergen would have to go out and raise capital in a normal rights issue of shares. That is not in our plans at all. So for the phase 2A study that we have that we will initiate here in quarter 3-4, we have enough funds because we, as you know, we have all our TO2 warrant programs from the last capital raise, and they are being exercised now as we speak, actually, in the period from the 14th to the 25th of August. And together with that and other fundings that we get, we have enough to also complete the phase 2A study. So we see that as a secured one, and that's very important for us.